on the western edge of Dearborn, Michigan, where the land dips toward the winding Rouge River, a stretch of forest once stood untouched. Long before smokestacks pierced the sky and assembly lines transformed the world, this land was quiet. Marshes, oak groves, shallow creeks that fed the river like veins. For centuries, indigenous people traveled through this region, hunting the dense woods and fishing the river's bend. By the mid-1800s, settlers had carved small farms into the soil, but much of the land remained wild, tangled, and largely ignored by industry. This is where the origins of Fair Lane truly begin, not with blueprints or architectural sketches, but with the young Henry Ford walking these riverbanks as a boy. Born on a nearby farm, Ford grew up with a deep fascination for the mechanical world and an equally deep resentment for rural life. He admired nature, but not the work required to tame it. Even as a child, he was drawn to the Rouge River's flowing energy and imagined machinery that could harness its power. By the early 1900s, Ford had become one of the most influential men in America. The Model T was reshaping the country, and Ford Motor Company was expanding faster than any industrial empire of its time. Yet with success came pressure, political scrutiny, public expectation, and the overwhelming weight of managing a workforce that numbered in the tens of thousands. At the height of this transformation, Henry and Clara Ford began searching for a home that could serve as both refuge and command center. Not a mansion built for display, but an estate with purpose. The land he remembered from childhood, rolling fields, the river's bend, the quiet woods, called to him again. It offered privacy, proximity, and possibility. In 1913, Ford purchased more than 1,300 acres along the Rouge River. To outsiders, it looked like a nostalgic return to his roots. But the truth was far more complex. Ford didn't want to relive the past. He wanted to reinvent it. And on this land, he would build a self-sufficient estate that reflected everything he believed about order, industry, and control. Fairlane's story begins here, with a man returning to the river that shaped him, ready to reshape it in return. When Henry and Clara Ford chose the site for their future home, it wasn't simply a matter of beauty or convenience. Fair Lane was selected with intention, strategic, personal, and deeply symbolic. To most of the world, Henry Ford appeared invincible, a titan who had conquered industry through sheer will and innovation. But beneath that public image lived a man who feared losing control. Control over his company, his workers, his reputation, and even his family. Fair Lane offered something no Detroit mansion could ever provide: distance. The 1,300 acres along the Rouge River gave Ford a buffer, a physical separation from the growing unrest at his factories. The rapid expansion of industrial labor, the rising tension between workers and management, and the increasing scrutiny from journalists made Detroit feel crowded and volatile. Ford needed a place where walls, gates, and geography itself could create a boundary between him and the world he was reshaping. Clara's motivations were more emotional. She longed for stability, a retreat where their son Edsel could grow up away from the pollution, noise, and rigid expectations that came with being Henry Ford's heir. To her, the river's bend symbolized peace, a place to build a warm domestic environment amid a life ruled by industrial ambition. Yet even Clara knew the estate would never be simply a home. Everything Henry touched became an extension of his ideology. The decision to build Fair Lane also reflected Ford's technological ambition. He was enamored with the idea of a house powered by nature, where hydroelectric turbines could generate electricity directly from the river. It would be a living showcase of innovation, a private experiment in self-sufficiency. What other industrialist lived in a mansion fueled by a river, its lights glowing from power generated mere feet away? There was also something darker. By choosing land so close to his childhood home, Ford was attempting to rewrite his own origins. He despised the drudgery of farm life but cherished its simplicity. Fair Lane would allow him to reclaim rural life on his own terms: nature without hardship, fields without labor, quiet without vulnerability. In the end, they chose this mansion because it offered everything Henry Ford valued: privacy, power, symbolism, and control. A place where the world outside could be held at a distance, and the world inside could be engineered to his exact specifications. Once the site was chosen, Henry Ford began shaping Fair Lane not just as a home, but as a personal kingdom. He hired architect Joseph Nathaniel French and landscape designer Jens Jensen, blending European elegance with American ingenuity. Limestone walls rose along the riverbank, carefully carved and positioned to maximize both grandeur and seclusion. Every angle, every line, reflected Ford's obsession with order, control, and permanence. The mansion quickly became more than a house. Workshops, stables, and greenhouses appeared across the estate, designed to function almost like a self-contained industrial compound. Ford was fascinated by automation, and he insisted that even the home's most domestic functions reflect efficiency. The kitchens were equipped with the latest appliances, heating and lighting systems incorporated early electrical innovations. Water systems and irrigation used hydraulic power drawn from the river. Every corner of Fair Lane was a testament to Henry Ford's belief that technology could tame nature, and that human ingenuity could solve every problem. Clara, meanwhile, had her own influence. She insisted on gardens that would feel both intimate and expansive, spaces for children to play safely, and interiors that balanced utility with comfort. Her touches softened some of Henry's rigidity: plush furniture, warm fabrics, and rooms designed for family gatherings rather than mere display. Yet even here, Ford's meticulous nature prevailed. Each flower bed followed a plan, every pathway adhered to precise measurements. No tree was planted without consideration of sunlight, drainage, and visual perspective. Nature itself was to be engineered. Expansion didn't stop at aesthetics. Ford built guest houses, a powerhouse, and even a private bridge to cross the Rouge River. Roads wound through the estate to accommodate staff and visitors alike, creating a microcosm where every element, from architecture to infrastructure, answered to Ford's vision. He treated the land as he did his factories, every system designed for maximum function, efficiency, and control. Fair Lane's transformation turned the estate into an almost autonomous world. Visitors described a property that was vast yet cohesive, elegant yet practical, beautiful yet undeniably Henry Ford. The mansion had become a machine in its own right, a machine to reflect status, to assert authority, and to provide a controlled haven amid the chaos of a rapidly industrializing Detroit. Life at Fair Lane was a careful balance of grandeur, routine, and silent rules dictated by Henry Ford himself. Each morning began early, often before dawn. Henry, a man of strict habits, rose to the hum of the estate's mechanical systems, water pumps, heating boilers, and electrical circuits that powered the house's lights and appliances. Breakfast was a quiet affair, usually in the kitchen or family dining room, where Clara ensured the children ate properly and the staff adhered to exact schedules. No detail was too small. Even the arrangement of silverware and plates reflected a discipline that mirrored Ford's industrial ethos. The mansion was alive with activity, yet controlled. Servants moved through the halls like clockwork, their footsteps and tasks choreographed to Henry's expectations. Maids dusted and polished according to a precise timetable. Gardeners maintained the expansive grounds with military-like precision. Cooks prepared meals that were as consistent as they were nourishing. Ford's children experienced a childhood unlike most, where play and education coexisted with subtle lessons in order, punctuality, and deference. Yet Clara worked tirelessly to preserve moments of warmth amid the rigid routines. Afternoons in the garden, quiet reading hours, and family picnics by the river offered brief reprieves from the relentless structure. The home's technological innovations shaped daily life in unique ways. Early elevators transported goods and occasionally family members. Telephone lines connected every wing, allowing Henry to monitor both domestic and business affairs without leaving his study. Lighting systems could illuminate rooms with a flick of a switch, a marvel at the time. Even leisure was controlled. Music, chess, and card games were allowed, but Henry's eye often monitored efficiency, order, and the lessons his children absorbed from every interaction. Despite the regimented environment, Fair Lane also carried a sense of sanctuary. Private nooks and gardens offered refuge from the constant hum of expectations, and Clara's influence softened corners of the house into warm spaces where laughter occasionally broke through. Guests were entertained with polite formality. Business associates observed both the comfort and precision of Ford's life, aware that every feature of the home reflected his vision and his values. Yet beneath the veneer of perfection, subtle tensions existed. Henry's obsession with control often clashed with family needs, and the mansion, as magnificent as it was, could feel isolating. Even as Fairlane symbolized innovation and power, it also mirrored the pressures, ambitions, and unspoken conflicts simmering beneath the surface of the Ford family. Life inside the home was as much about maintaining appearances and structure as it was about comfort, a reflection of Henry Ford himself, brilliant, exacting, and unyielding. Beneath the serene lawns, meticulously trimmed hedges, and sparkling riverfront of Fairlane, pressures were mounting that no amount of architectural perfection could disguise. Henry Ford's relentless pursuit of control and efficiency extended beyond the factory floor into the very walls of his mansion. The house, while a technological marvel and symbol of industrial success, became a stage for tension between personal ambition, family expectations, and public scrutiny. Clara Ford, ever the anchor, managed the household with patience and precision, yet she could not entirely shield the family from Henry's exacting nature. His children, particularly Edsel, felt the weight of enormous expectations from an early age. Education and recreation were carefully structured, but every moment carried the implicit lesson that failure, inefficiency, or defiance could not be tolerated. Edsel, the only son, bore the brunt of this pressure. He was groomed not just to inherit a fortune, but to uphold the Ford legacy. Even small mistakes in schoolwork, sports, or social conduct could trigger Henry's sharp correction. Outside the family sphere, the mansion was a hub for visitors, dignitaries, and engineers who marveled at Fairlane's innovations. But every guest added a layer of scrutiny. The family lived under constant observation. Employees, neighbors, and even casual observers noted how they behaved, how they walked the halls, how they interacted. This invisible audience amplified the weight of expectations. Clara attempted to create private spaces, but the mansion's size and layout, designed to impress and demonstrate Ford's ingenuity, made true privacy nearly impossible. The tensions extended beyond the walls of the home. Labor unrest at Ford's factories echoed back to Fairlane, reminding the family that Henry's empire, for all its grandeur, was built atop controversy. Strikes, protests, and criticism of working conditions tested the limits of his public persona and filtered into family life. Conversations at dinner often skirted the subject of unrest, but there was no escaping it. Every decision in the home, from expenditure to staffing, was informed by the shadow of his industrial empire. Even as the mansion showcased power, wealth, and innovation, it mirrored the vulnerabilities of those inside. Relationships were strained, emotions contained, and ambitions tightly controlled. Fairlane, meant to be a sanctuary, revealed the subtle cost of genius married to authority, the isolation of family members, the quiet friction between parent and child, and the ever-present weight of legacy. In this grand estate, the struggle was never just about comfort. It was about managing expectations, maintaining appearances, and navigating the hidden fractures beneath the polished surfaces. By the late 1920s, Fairlane had become more than just a home. It was the physical embodiment of Henry Ford's vision, wealth, and ambition. Yet even as the mansion stood as a symbol of industrial might and domestic innovation, cracks were beginning to appear in the carefully curated life inside its walls. What had once been a hub of energy and ingenuity began to feel constrained, burdened by the weight of expectation and the relentless pace of Ford's empire. Edsel Ford, now a young man, began to chafe under the dual pressures of his father's expectations and the mansion's omnipresent symbolism. The estate, which had once been a playground of technological marvels and outdoor pursuits, now carried an air of rigidity. Every corner of Fairlane reflected Henry's desire for order, efficiency, and control, from the automated heating and water systems to the exacting landscaping that left no leaf out of place. It was a home that demanded discipline, and the family, despite love and loyalty, could not escape its authority. Even Clara Ford, who had worked tirelessly to maintain warmth and cohesion, found the house's perfection isolating. She had devoted decades to ensuring that Fairlane functioned seamlessly, staffing schedules, gardens, riverfront activities, and the family's private retreats. But the human cost was evident. The family's social interactions often felt performative, as if every gathering, meal, or stroll along the Rouge River carried the weight of expectation. Guests marveled at the elegance and technical marvels of the estate, yet few understood the subtle tensions that pulsed beneath its walls. At the same time, the pressures of business and public perception continued to follow Henry home. Factory strikes, labor disputes, and critical headlines from Detroit filtered back into the halls of Fairlane, reminding the family that no matter how insulated the mansion might appear, it could not protect them from the realities of Henry's world. The estate, for all its beauty and innovation, had become both a refuge and a prison, a place where every success was a reminder of responsibility and every comfort was shadowed by obligation. By the end of this chapter, Fairlane was a mansion at its apex, yet already hinting at the delicate balance it required to maintain. It remained a marvel, a testament to Henry Ford's genius, but it was also a home in which love, ambition, and expectation constantly collided. The final chapter of daily life in the mansion would reveal the consequences of living within such perfection. A stage set for legacy, conflict, and the eventual passing of stewardship to the next generation. After Henry Ford passed in 1947, Fairlane entered a new phase, one defined less by invention and more by the weight of history. The mansion, once brimming with purpose and energy, now stood as a monument to a life that had reshaped an industry and, simultaneously, reshaped the family who lived within its walls. Edsel Ford had died years earlier, leaving the task of managing the family's legacy to a generation grappling with both admiration and burden. The estate, for all its grandeur, could not shelter them from the realities of grief, expectation, and the cultural shifts sweeping through post-war America. The estate remained staffed and meticulously maintained, but the energy had changed. Where once the hum of machinery, the laughter of children, and the meticulous operations of domestic life had harmonized with Henry's vision, now a quieter tension settled over the property. Clara Ford continued to reside there for a time, preserving routines and traditions, yet the house seemed to carry an echo of absence. Rooms once alive with experiments and inventions became memorials of achievement. Henry's trophies, Edsel's art collections, and the many artifacts that chronicled the family's rise to prominence. The mansion itself became a teaching tool, a physical reminder of a family who had shaped and been shaped by the relentless pursuit of progress. Meanwhile, the public perception of Fairlane evolved. What had once been a private demonstration of wealth and innovation slowly became a symbol of Ford's complex legacy, visionary yet controlling, generous yet exacting. Scholars, journalists, and later historians examined the estate not only for its architectural beauty or technological marvels, but also for the stories it held about power, family dynamics, and the costs of industrial domination. Fairlane's hidden tensions, strained marriages, isolated children, the intense demands placed on staff, began to emerge as key chapters in the broader narrative of the Ford family. The mansion also entered a period of transformation. Parts of the estate were repurposed for public engagement, archival preservation, and educational programs, allowing outsiders to glimpse Henry's world without disrupting the private sanctity that the family had once fiercely protected. Gardens were preserved, machinery documented, and tours created to showcase both brilliance and controversy. Fairlane became both a historical artifact and a mirror reflecting the contradictions of its founder. Innovation tempered by control, generosity shadowed by isolation. In the aftermath, the mansion no longer functioned as a fully lived-in home, but as a vessel of memory. Its walls held decades of triumph, tension, and loss, reminding each visitor and each descendant that Fairlane was never just a house. It was a stage on which one of America's most influential families played out the drama of ambition, legacy, and human complexity. The estate's story was far from over, but the daily life that had once defined it was irrevocably past. Today, Fairlane stands as more than just a mansion. It is a testament to the enduring vision of Henry Ford and the complexities of the life he built around it. The estate, with its sprawling gardens, technological innovations, and carefully crafted architecture, reflects the scale of ambition that defined Ford himself. Visitors can still walk the limestone halls, trace the corridors where experiments were planned, and imagine the machinery humming in hidden workshops. But they also see the human story behind the grandeur. The estate embodies both achievement and contradiction, the brilliance of industrial innovation alongside the costs it imposed on family labor and personal relationships. Fairlane's influence extends far beyond its physical walls. Scholars study the estate as a lens into early 20th century America, understanding how wealth, technology, and social hierarchy intertwined. The gardens, the mechanical systems, and the carefully planned living spaces reveal a meticulous attention to detail, a desire to control not only industry but life itself. The mansion also offers insight into the private struggles of one of the nation's most powerful families, the pressures, the isolation, and the sacrifices hidden behind public success. The Ford family legacy, inseparable from Fairlane, is similarly complex. It is a story of vision and innovation, but also of human tension, ambition, and the challenge of preserving family identity in the shadow of an industrial empire. Fairlane became both a symbol of power and a sanctuary, a place where triumph and tragedy intersected. Today, the estate serves multiple roles: historic landmark, educational site, and cultural touchstone. It reminds us that the legacies we leave are built not only from invention and success, but also from the ways we navigate relationships, responsibility, and the passage of time. Fairlane endures as a monument to possibility and caution, a place where innovation met human complexity, and where the walls themselves tell the story of a man, his family, and the empire they helped shape. In the end, Fairlane is not just a mansion. It is a mirror reflecting ambition, legacy, and the human cost of greatness, a house that whispers both triumph and warning for generations to come.